The council chamber floated in the void between stars, a massive station where 12 different alien species gathered to discuss galactic affairs. Today's meeting was routine, like most others. Representatives from various worlds sat in their specialized chairs, breathing different atmospheres through personal life support systems. Deho adjusted his water-filled helmet and reviewed his notes. As the Nautilian representative, he had been working with humans for over a decade. They were pleasant enough creatures, always polite and eager to trade. Nothing like the aggressive species that sometimes cause trouble in the Outer Rim. The human report, please, announced the council chairman, a tall being with crystal-like skin that reflected the chamber's lights. Deho activated his holographic display. Numbers and charts appeared in the air above the council floor. Humans have established 17 new mining operations this quarter. They have also created 3 agricultural colonies and maintained peaceful contact with all neighboring species. Several representatives nodded approvingly. The humans were predictable. They dug rocks from dead planets, grew food on suitable worlds, and sold both to anyone willing to pay fair prices. They never started fights, never demanded special treatment, and always honored their contracts. Any military developments? Asked Counselor Vex Prime, whose species valued strength above all else. None of significance, Deho replied. They maintain small defense fleets around their colonies, but nothing beyond standard protection protocols. Their largest vessels appear to be cargo ships and mining platforms. In the observation gallery, human diplomat Min Ho listened quietly. He rarely spoke during these meetings unless directly addressed. Most council members had learned to expect little from humanity in terms of galactic politics. They were useful trade partners, but hardly influential in matters of real importance. Meanwhile, thousands of light-years away, Admiral Jiwoo stood in the command center of Luna Station, humanity's primary military facility, hidden on the far side of Earth's moon. She studied intelligence reports that would have shocked the council representatives if they had access to them. The Keth Empire is moving again, reported her aide, Captain Taemin. Our deep space scouts confirm major fleet buildups in sectors 7 and 9. Jiwoo frowned at the tactical display. The Keth were a warrior race, evolved from pack hunters on a harsh world where only the strong survived. They had been expanding their territory for decades, conquering weaker species and enslaving their populations. So far they had avoided human space, but recent movements suggested that might be changing. What do our xenobiology experts say? Jiwoo asked. Dr. Heejin filed her latest report yesterday, Taemin replied, pulling up the classified document. She believes most council species evolved from prey animals. They naturally avoid conflict and prefer diplomatic solutions to direct confrontation. The Keth, being predators, see this as weakness. Jiwoo nodded grimly. Humanity understood predators very well. Earth had been full of them, and humans had survived by becoming the most dangerous predator of all. But that was information the galaxy didn't need to know, at least not yet. Back at the research station on Europa, Dr. Hai-Jin continued her studies of alien psychology. Her work was considered purely academic by the Council, but Earth Command found it extremely valuable for strategic planning. Understanding how different species thought and reacted was crucial for maintaining the peaceful facade that humanity had carefully constructed. Her latest findings were disturbing. The Keth Empire showed all the signs of a species preparing for major expansion. Their recent diplomatic messages contained subtle threats, testing responses from various neighbors. They were looking for weakness, and unfortunately, humanity's peaceful reputation made them an attractive target. Computer, compile threat assessment for Keth Empire expansion patterns, she instructed her AI assistant. The analysis was clear and concerning. If the Keth followed their historical patterns, they would likely test humanity's defenses within the next few months. They would expect quick surrender from what they perceived as a soft trading civilization. Captain Taiman's exploration ship, the Soul's Pride, was conducting a routine survey mission in the border regions when his sensors detected something alarming. Massive energy signatures were moving through hyperspace, far larger than anything civilian traffic would produce. Navigation, plot those trajectories, he ordered his crew. The results made his blood run cold. The Keth fleet movements were clearly aimed at 3 human colonies: Harmony, New Shanghai, and the research station on Kepler 442b. All 3 were lightly defended, with populations that included many civilians. Taemin immediately sent an encrypted message to Earth Command, then activated his ship's emergency beacon to alert nearby human vessels. He also sent a formal warning to the Council, following proper diplomatic procedures. The Council's response was exactly what Dr. He Jin's psychological profiles had predicted. They scheduled committee meetings to discuss the situation. They proposed sending diplomatic messages to the Keith Empire, requesting clarification of their intentions. They suggested economic sanctions if the Keth refused to negotiate. All of these responses would take weeks or months to organize and implement. The human colonies had days at most before the Keth fleet arrived. In the depths of space, hidden facilities that the Council had never detected began powering up systems that had been dormant for years. Ships that appeared on no civilian registries received activation codes. Personnel who officially worked as miners, farmers, and researchers reported to secondary duty stations that existed only in classified databases. Admiral Ji Woo stood before a secure communication screen showing President Na Young in her office on Earth. Behind the president, military advisors and government officials waited grimly for her decision. The Keth will attack our colonies within 72 hours, Ji Woo reported. Council response will be too slow to matter. We need to decide how to respond. President Na Young was quiet for a long moment. She had hoped this day would never come. But humanity had prepared for it since first contact with alien civilizations. The galaxy was full of species that had never known true predators, never experienced the kind of warfare that had shaped human civilization. Maintaining peace meant hiding humanity's true nature, but protecting human lives might require revealing it. Begin Phase 1 protocols, the president finally ordered. Defensive measures only for now. Let's see if the Keth are willing to listen to reason after they see what they're actually facing. Ji Woo saluted and closed the channel. Within minutes, coded signals were transmitted to human installations throughout the galaxy. Ships that had masqueraded as civilian vessels began revealing their true capabilities. Defense platforms that appeared to be simple mining stations powered up weapon systems that no Council database had ever recorded. The sleeping giant was beginning to wake up, and the galaxy was about to learn why humanity had never needed to ask anyone for protection. War Leader Vex stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. 3 human colonies lay before his fleet, defenseless and ripe for conquest. Intelligence reports confirmed what he had suspected. Humans were weak traders who relied on others for protection. Begin the attack, he commanded, his voice echoing through the ship's communication system. Show these soft creatures the price of weakness. The Keth fleet opened fire without warning. Orbital bombardment platforms rained destruction on the agricultural world of Harmony, where human families had been growing food for the past 20 years. The mining station at New Shanghai faced a ground invasion force that expected to meet little resistance. The research colony on Kepler 442b was completely destroyed within minutes. Its civilian population of 3,000 scientists and support staff killed instantly. On Harmony, Colonel Su Young received the attack warning just minutes before the bombardment began. She had been expecting this moment for years, though she had hoped it would never come. Her official title was Colonial Militia Commander, but her real background was much different. All civilians to emergency shelters. Immediately, she broadcast across the colony's communication network. This is not a drill. We are under attack. The colonists responded with a discipline that would have surprised outside observers. These were not panicked farmers running in terror. They moved with purpose and training, following evacuation procedures they had practiced countless times. Children were gathered by teachers who doubled as combat medics. Elderly residents were assisted by neighbors who were also trained soldiers. Engineer Kyung-soo activated the colony's defense grid from his position in the underground command center. What the Keth fleet saw as a simple farming world suddenly bristled with hidden weapon emplacements. Shield generators that had been disguised as agricultural equipment powered up to deflect the orbital bombardment. The first wave of Keth ground forces landed expecting to find terrified civilians, begging for mercy. Instead, they faced organized resistance from defenders who knew every building, every tunnel, and every possible ambush point on their world. In the council chambers, Councillor Minho sat calmly as emergency messages flooded in from human colonies under attack. His hands rested peacefully on his data pad, but those who knew humans well might have noticed the slight tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I request an emergency session, Minho said quietly when the current speaker finished. His voice carried no emotion, no urgency, just a simple statement of fact. The Keth Empire has initiated hostilities against human civilian populations. The council erupted in discussion. Representatives from peaceful species expressed shock and outrage. Others called for immediate diplomatic intervention. Committee chairs began organizing response protocols that would take days or weeks to implement. Representative Daeho, who had grown fond of humanity over years of cooperation, approached Minho during a recess. "I am sorry for what has happened," he said sincerely. "The council will respond, but our procedures take time. Is there anything we can do to help immediately?" Minho looked at him with what might have been appreciation. "Thank you, but I believe my people will manage the situation." The calm certainty in his voice puzzled Daeho. How could humans be so confident when facing a military power like the Keth Empire? On New Shanghai Mining Station, the Keth Ground Assault Force discovered that human miners were remarkably difficult to capture. The facility's tunnels seemed to extend much deeper than any mining operation would require, and the miners themselves fought with weapons and tactics far beyond what civilians should possess. Commander Boram led the station's defense from a control room that officially didn't exist. She watched as Keth soldiers advanced through corridors that her people knew intimately. Every step the invaders took was monitored, predicted, and countered by defenders who had trained for this exact scenario. "Mining charges are in position," reported her demolitions expert. "We can collapse tunnel sections 7 through 12 on your command." Boram smiled grimly. The Keth expected to capture valuable mining equipment and enslaved workers. They would find neither. Human installations were designed to be defended or destroyed, never surrendered. Back on Earth, President Na Young addressed an emergency session of the World Assembly. Representatives from every nation and colony world listened as their leader spoke words that would change humanity's relationship with the galaxy forever. "For 200 years, we have chosen peace," she said. Her voice carried to every human settlement in known space. "We have hidden our strength behind smiles and trade agreements. We have pretended to be harmless because we remembered what we were capable of on our homeworld. The Keth Empire has decided that our mercy was weakness. They will learn otherwise." General Dong Hyun activated protocols that had been prepared since humanity's first contact with alien civilizations. The Sleeping Dragon contingency plan began to unfold across dozens of star systems. Ships that had operated as peaceful traders for decades revealed hidden weapon systems. Research stations powered up military-grade defensive arrays. Civilian colonies activated command centers that coordinated with Earth's military high command. Dr. Young-soo, the military psychologist who had helped design humanity's long-term strategy, watched the activation reports with professional interest. His psychological profiles of alien species had proven accurate. Most council races were simply unprepared for total warfare as humans understood it. They fought limited engagements for specific goals, not wars of annihilation for survival. The council's monitoring stations began detecting massive energy signatures from human space. Ships that had never appeared on any military registry were powering up reactors and moving into formation. The small exploration fleet that representatives thought comprised humanity's entire space navy was revealing itself to be a tiny fraction of their actual military capability. Admiral Jiwoo coordinated the response from Luna Command. Her staff included officers whose official positions were in civilian industries, but whose real training was in strategic warfare. They had spent decades preparing for this moment, hoping it would never come but ready when it did. "Phase 2 is authorized," came the message from Earth Command. "All colonies are cleared to reveal defensive capabilities. Fleet elements are authorized to drop civilian cover and engage hostile forces." Across human space, the pretense of weakness fell away like a discarded mask. Mining ships revealed themselves as heavily armed patrol vessels. Cargo transports dropped their disguised hulls to show the military destroyers beneath. Agricultural colonies activated orbital defense platforms that had been hidden for decades. War leader Vex watched in growing alarm as his easy conquest turned into a nightmare. The human colonies were not surrendering as expected. Instead, they were fighting back with weapons and tactics that his intelligence reports had never mentioned. Worse, new ships were appearing on his sensors, ships that seemed to have materialized out of nowhere. Where did these vessels come from? He demanded of his intelligence officer. Unknown war leader. They are not in our databases. They appear to be military designs, but humans are not supposed to have military fleets of this size. As the first day of what the Keth had planned as a quick conquest drew to a close, it became clear that they had made a terrible mistake. The humans were not the weak prey they had appeared to be. They were something far more dangerous. Predators who had been pretending to be harmless. The council representatives watched their monitoring displays in growing shock as the true scope of human military capability revealed itself. The species they had dismissed as peaceful traders possessed a fleet that numbered in the thousands of ships, all apparently designed for warfare rather than commerce. Representative Deho stared at the tactical displays showing human forces engaging the Keth invasion fleet. "How many ships do they have?" he whispered to himself. The question would haunt the galaxy for years to come. The transformation was complete within 48 hours. What the galaxy had known as peaceful human space became something entirely different. Ships emerged from hidden bases that Council surveys had never detected. Civilian installations revealed weapons systems that exceeded the defensive capabilities of most military worlds. Fleet Admiral Sun Mi stood in the command center of the dreadnought Inchan's Hammer, a ship that had officially never existed. For 15 years, it had been listed in civilian databases as a deep space mining platform. The deception had been so complete that even detailed scans would have shown mineral extraction equipment and ore processing facilities. Now its true nature was revealed. The Inchan's Hammer was larger than most Council capital ships, armed with weapons that operated on principles alien engineers had never seen, and crewed by officers whose training had been hidden behind cover identities as civilian workers. Status report on the Keth invasion force. Sun Mi commanded. Their advance fleets have been stopped at all 3 target colonies, reported Commander Yunji, her tactical officer. Harmony Colony is holding under orbital shield protection. New Shanghai Station has repelled the ground assault. The survivors from Kepler 442b have been avenged. Sun Mi nodded grimly. The research station's destruction had killed 3,000 civilians, including families with children. That act alone had sealed the Keth Empire's fate, though war leader Vex didn't know it yet. In the council chambers, emergency sessions had been running for 3 straight days. Representatives from 12 species struggled to understand what they were witnessing. The humans they thought they knew had vanished, replaced by something that challenged their understanding of galactic power structures. "How many ships do they actually have?" demanded Councillor Zeth Prime, whose crystalline form flickered with agitation. "Our estimates put their entire fleet at maybe 200 vessels, mostly cargo haulers and system patrol craft." Deho consulted his latest intelligence reports with growing unease. Current count shows over 3,000 active military vessels, with more coming online every hour. "We believe they have major shipyards and bases that we never detected." The number sent shocked silence through the chamber. 3,000 ships represented a fleet larger than most council member species possessed. For humanity to have hidden such a force for decades suggested deception, on a scale that peaceful species found difficult to comprehend. Dr. Sang-hoon, humanity's leading expert on comparative evolution, had been recalled from his civilian research position to provide strategic analysis for the military command. His academic work on alien psychology had taken on deadly importance as human forces prepared for full-scale warfare. "Most council species evolved from prey animals," he explained to the assembled military leaders. "Their instincts drive them to avoid confrontation, seek diplomatic solutions, and form protective groups. The Keth evolved from pack hunters, which makes them aggressive but still bound by pack mentality. And humans?" asked General Dong Hyun, though he already knew the answer. "We evolved as persistence hunters and tool users. We're capable of both individual initiative and group coordination in ways that neither pure predators nor pure prey can match. We can outthink the Keth and outfight the council species not because we're stronger, but because we evolved for a different kind of survival." This evolutionary advantage was becoming clear as human forces engaged the Keth invasion fleet. Captain Wu Jin led a squadron of stealth ships that had infiltrated behind enemy lines, using tactics that confused and terrified the Keth commanders. Instead of direct confrontation, the humans struck at supply lines, communication networks, and command structures. The Keth were pack hunters, dependent on clear hierarchies and group coordination. When human psychological warfare tactics turned their own communications against them, Spreading false orders and contradictory intelligence, their formations began to collapse into chaos. War leader Vex found himself fighting an enemy that seemed to anticipate his every move, while remaining completely unpredictable themselves. His warriors were brave and skilled, but they had never faced opponents who could think like individuals while coordinating like a superorganism. "They're everywhere and nowhere," his tactical officer reported in confusion. "Our sensors detect human ships in 12 different sectors simultaneously, but when we move to engage, they vanish and appear somewhere else." What Vex didn't understand was that humanity had learned warfare from a planet where survival meant adapting to any environment and defeating any predator. Earth had taught humans to be patient, clever, and absolutely ruthless when necessary. Dr. Jae Hyun's weapons research, officially classified as industrial technology development, produced systems that operated on principles the Keth couldn't counter. Human weapons were designed by a species that had survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, and global wars. They were built to work in any condition, repair themselves when damaged, and adapt to unexpected situations. The Council representatives watched in growing horror as reports arrived from the battle zones. Human forces weren't just repelling the Keth invasion, they were systematically dismantling it with an efficiency that suggested they had been planning for this exact scenario for decades. "They're not fighting like any species we've encountered," reported the Council's military analyst, a being whose own people had never experienced warfare beyond border skirmishes. "Their tactics seem designed to cause maximum psychological damage while minimizing their own casualties." Counselor Min Ho, humanity's representative, had maintained his quiet demeanor throughout the crisis, but now as the true scope of human military capability became undeniable, other council members began to ask uncomfortable questions. "How long have you been planning this?" demanded Counselor Vex Prime, his warrior species' respect for strength overriding his previous dismissal of humanity. Min Ho's response chilled the chamber. "We have been preparing for this possibility since first contact. We hoped it would never be necessary, but we learned long ago that hope is not a strategy." The implications were staggering. For over a century, humanity had been quietly building a military force capable of challenging the entire galaxy, while maintaining a facade of peaceful trade and exploration. They had infiltrated the Council's monitoring systems, hidden their true capabilities, and positioned themselves to defend against threats that other species couldn't even imagine. But perhaps most disturbing was the realization that humanity had been holding back. Intercepted communications revealed ongoing debates among human military leaders about acceptable force, levels, and proportional response. The devastating attacks that were crushing the Keth invasion represented humans exercising restraint. Scientist Hanul's quantum warfare research, disguised as theoretical physics studies, allowed human ships to coordinate attacks across impossible distances and strike from angles that defied conventional military doctrine. Her work gave human forces a tactical advantage that made traditional fleet formations obsolete. As the third day of conflict ended, the Keth invasion force was in full retreat. What had been planned as a quick conquest of weak civilian targets had become a military disaster that threatened the survival of the Keth Empire itself. War leader Vex, his fleet reduced to less than half its original strength, sent desperate messages to the Keth homeworld requesting reinforcements. But human intelligence services had been monitoring Keth communications for years, and the reinforcements would find human forces waiting for them. The Council finally understood the magnitude of their miscalculation. The species they had treated as harmless junior partners possessed military capabilities that exceeded their own combined fleets. Humanity had allowed them to maintain their independence and prosperity, not because they had to, but because they chose to. Representative Daeho, staring at tactical displays showing human forces pursuing the retreating Keth fleet into their own territory, asked the question that haunted them all. What else don't we know about them? The answer, as the galaxy would soon discover, was more than they could possibly imagine. The hunt had begun. Human forces pursued the retreating Keth fleet with methodical precision that terrified observers from other species. This wasn't the chaotic pursuit of angry primitives seeking revenge. It was the calculated advance of apex predators who had decided their prey needed to be eliminated. Admiral Bitna commanded the Second Human Fleet, a formation that had materialized seemingly from nowhere to block the Keth retreat. Her ships moved with coordination that baffled alien military analysts. Unlike the hierarchical formations favored by other species, human fleets operated like living organisms, with individual units making independent decisions while maintaining perfect overall coordination. Keth Empire Stronghold designated. Target 7 is requesting surrender terms, reported her communications officer. Lieutenant Eugen Bitna studied the tactical display showing the massive fortress that controlled access to 3 Keth systems. It housed over 1 million civilians along with military personnel and represented one of the Empire's most important strategic positions. Inform them that surrender terms will be discussed after their military forces have been neutralized, she replied calmly. Begin psychological operations. What followed would be studied by military academies for generations, though most species would find it too disturbing to fully understand. Instead of launching a direct assault that would have cost thousands of human lives and destroyed the fortress, Bitna's forces began systematically undermining the defenders' morale and unity. Human intelligence operatives, who had been infiltrating Keth space for years, activated sleeper networks throughout the stronghold. False reports flooded the communication networks. Supply deliveries were contaminated with slow-acting sedatives. Maintenance systems began failing in ways that suggested sabotage by fellow Keth. The fortress defenders, evolved from pack hunters who depended on group loyalty and clear hierarchies, began turning against each other as paranoia spread. Within 72 hours, the impregnable stronghold surrendered without a single human casualty. Dr. Jae Hyun's weapons development programs, officially classified as civilian research projects, continued producing systems that redefined the possibilities of warfare. His latest creation was a form of directed energy that could disable electronic systems without harming organic life, perfect for capturing rather than destroying enemy installations. The weapon had been designed based on humanity's deep understanding of electromagnetic fields, developed through centuries of scientific advancement that other species had dismissed as primitive tinkering with natural forces. Now it allowed human forces to neutralize entire enemy fleets without killing their crews. Captain Wu Jin's special operations teams had penetrated deep into Keth space, conducting sabotage missions that crippled the Empire's ability to coordinate resistance. These weren't random acts of destruction, they were precisely targeted strikes that demonstrated humanity's comprehensive understanding of Keth infrastructure and psychology. Primary communication hub neutralized. Wu Jin reported from a Keth industrial world. Secondary targets proceeding on schedule. No civilian casualties. This last point was crucial. Human forces went to extraordinary lengths to avoid harming non-combatants, even among their enemies. This restraint puzzled the Keth, who had expected the brutal retaliation typical of their own warfare. But it terrified the Council species who recognized it as evidence of supreme confidence and control. In the Council chambers, representatives struggled to comprehend reports that seemed to defy everything they understood about warfare. Human forces had somehow infiltrated the most secure Keth installations, turned their own defenses against them, and were advancing through enemy territory at a pace that should have been impossible. "They're not just winning," observed Counselor Zeth Prime, his crystalline form flickering with anxiety. "They're demonstrating capabilities we never imagined existed." Scientist. Hanil's quantum warfare. Research had produced technologies that allowed human ships to coordinate attacks across vast distances instantaneously. Her theoretical work on quantum entanglement had been dismissed by Council scientists as interesting, but impractical. Now it gave human forces the ability to strike simultaneously from multiple directions, making conventional defensive strategies useless. The Council's own military advisors were baffled by human tactical doctrine. Fleet formations appeared and disappeared in ways that violated their understanding of space combat. Supply lines operated without detectable logistics networks. Command structures functioned without centralized control systems. Representative Daeho attempted to serve as a mediator, suggesting that humanity should consider accepting Keth surrender offers and negotiating peace terms. The response from Counselor Minho sent chills through the assembled representatives. The Keth Empire chose to make this a war of extinction when they destroyed our research colony, Minho said quietly. They killed civilian families, including children. We are simply better at extinction than they are. The words carried no anger, no emotion at all. They were delivered as a simple statement of fact. which made them infinitely more terrifying than any passionate threat would have been. War leader Vex, commanding what remained of the Keth invasion force from his damaged flagship, finally began to understand the magnitude of his species' miscalculation. The humans weren't just defeating his forces, they were systematically dismantling the entire Keth Empire's ability to wage war. "How many ships do they have?" he asked his tactical officer for the 100th time. "Unknown, war leader. Every time we think we've identified their main fleet, new formations appear. Our best estimate is that we're facing a force at least 10 times larger than their official registry indicated. But the true horror wasn't the number of ships, it was the casual efficiency with which human forces operated. They weren't straining their resources or calling up emergency reserves. This devastating campaign represented normal, operational capacity for a military that had been preparing for galactic warfare while pretending to be peaceful traders. Dr. Young-Su's psychological warfare programs, developed through humanity's deep understanding of predator and prey mentalities, were breaking the Keth Empire's will to fight. Captured Keth officers were subjected to interrogation techniques that didn't involve physical torture, but instead exploited their species' pack mentalities and hierarchical instincts. Within days, human intelligence services possessed complete information about Keth military capabilities, strategic planning, and command structures. This intelligence advantage allowed human forces to stay 3 moves ahead of every Keth response, turning what should have been a difficult campaign into a series of predetermined outcomes. Fleet Admiral Sunmi coordinated the overall strategy from her command ship, now revealed to be the size of a small space station and equipped with technologies that Council scientists couldn't identify. Her fleet moved through Keth space like a force of nature, unstoppable and seemingly unlimited. "Keth High Command is requesting negotiations," reported her intelligence officer. Commander Inwu Sunmi studied the strategic display, showing human forces positioned throughout Keth territory. The empire that had seemed so threatening just weeks ago was now completely at humanity's mercy. "Inform them that we will discuss terms after their military forces have been completely neutralized," she replied. "Continue operations as planned." The council representatives watched in stunned silence as their monitoring systems tracked human forces advancing on the Keth homeworld itself. What had begun as concern for humanity's survival had transformed into horror at witnessing the systematic destruction of a galactic power by a species they had considered harmless. The most disturbing realization was that humanity was still holding back. Intelligence reports indicated that the devastating forces they were witnessing represented only a fraction of human military capability. The species that had conquered every ecosystem on Earth had built a war machine capable of conquering the galaxy, then hidden it behind smiles and trade agreements for over a century. As the 4th day of humanity's counterattack ended, the Keth Empire ceased to exist as a military threat. Their fleets were destroyed or captured, their strongholds occupied, their command structure eliminated. All that remained was negotiating the terms of their complete surrender. But the galaxy's attention was no longer focused on the Keth. Every species, every government, every military force was asking the same terrifying question. If humans could do this to the Keth Empire, what could they do to the rest of them? The answer, as they would soon discover, was anything they chose to do. The war ended not with destruction but with reconstruction. This final revelation proved more unsettling to the galactic community than humanity's military might have been. The species that had demonstrated the ability to annihilate the Keth Empire now set about rebuilding it with the same methodical efficiency they had shown in its conquest. Diplomatie. Insu arrived at the former Keth capital aboard a ship that had been disguised as a civilian transport for 20 years. In reality, it was a mobile command center equipped with everything needed to establish governmental control over conquered territory. The ease with which humans had prepared for occupation duties suggested they had been planning for this possibility since first contact with alien civilizations. The Keth homeworld, which had braced for orbital bombardment and mass casualties, instead found itself under the most efficient administration in its history. Human occupation forces implemented infrastructure improvements, medical assistance programs, and economic reconstruction with a competence that baffled both the conquered Keth and observing council representatives. "We learned on Earth that the strongest predator is not the one that kills everything," Insu explained to the stunned Keth Leadership Council. It's the one that kills only what it needs to kill. We could have destroyed your entire species. We chose not to because we prefer trading partners to graveyards. Fleet Admiral Sunmi oversaw the transition of Keth military assets into human control with procedures so detailed, they seem to have been prepared decades in advance. Former Keth warships were retrofitted with human technology and crewed by mixed human-Keth teams. Keth military officers who demonstrated competence and reliability were integrated into the new command structure under human supervision. The process revealed another layer of human strategic thinking that alien observers found disturbing. Humanity didn't just conquer, they absorbed and improved. The Keth Empire's best technologies were evaluated, modified, and integrated into human systems. Their most capable personnel were recruited and retained. Their useful infrastructure was preserved and enhanced. Dr. Sang-hoon presented his evolutionary analysis to a joint session of human leadership and council representatives. His findings explained why human military doctrine seemed incomprehensible to other species. But they also revealed uncomfortable truths about the galactic balance of power. Most spacefaring species evolved from prey animals that achieved intelligence through cooperation and environmental adaptation, he explained. They naturally seek consensus, avoid risk, and prefer defensive strategies. This makes them excellent at building stable civilizations but poor at rapid adaptation to new threats. He activated a holographic display showing evolutionary trees for various galactic species. The patterns were clear and disturbing. The Keth evolved from pack hunters, which made them aggressive but bound by hierarchical thinking. They could conquer but not truly adapt. Humans evolved as persistence hunters and tool users. We developed intelligence specifically to hunt other intelligent predators. We're the only known species that evolved to be better at thinking than our prey. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just more advanced militarily. They were evolutionarily designed to outthink and outmaneuver any other known intelligence. They had spent a century studying galactic species not as equals, but as a scientist studies laboratory subjects. The council chambers underwent emergency renovation to accommodate humanity's new status as a permanent security member. The change was more than symbolic. It represented the galaxy's acknowledgement that real power had always rested with the species they had dismissed as harmless traitors. Ambassador Ye Jin, humanity's new representative to the Reformed Council, worked to establish protocols that accounted for humanity's true capabilities, while maintaining the peace that most species desperately wanted. Her diplomatic approach was as carefully calculated as the military campaign had been. "We have no desire to rule the galaxy," she assured the assembled representatives. "We prefer the current system where each species governs its own territory. But we will not tolerate threats to human civilians, and we will not pretend to be defenseless when others mistake our restraint for weakness." The former Keth Empire became a model of efficient governance under human administration. Infrastructure projects that the Keth had struggled with for decades were completed in months. Economic productivity increased dramatically as human organizational methods were implemented. Most surprising of all, former Keth military officers began requesting transfers to human-controlled sectors, preferring competent leadership to the chaos they had known. Captain Taemin, whose early warnings had helped prepare for the Keth invasion, now commanded a mixed fleet of human and former Keth vessels patrolling the reformed territory. The integration of former enemies into human command structures demonstrated another aspect of human strategic thinking that other species found difficult to understand. "We don't hold grudges against soldiers who were following orders," he explained to a delegation of council observers. "The Keth warriors are skilled and brave. Under proper leadership, they make excellent allies." This pragmatic approach to former enemies was typical of human policy throughout the occupied territories. Leaders who had ordered attacks on civilians were removed and tried for war crimes, but common soldiers and administrators who demonstrated competence were retained and promoted based on merit. The galaxy's other aggressive species quietly canceled expansion plans as word spread about humanity's true capabilities. The systematic destruction of the Keth Empire served as an object lesson that even the most warlike species could understand. Humans were not safe targets. Dr. Jae-hyun's research programs, now openly acknowledged as military development, produced technologies that other species couldn't duplicate or counter. Human science had advanced along paths that prey-evolved species couldn't follow, creating weapons and defenses based on principles that required predator-level thinking to understand. But perhaps the most unsettling revelation was the scope of human infiltration throughout galactic civilization. Intelligence networks that had operated undetected for decades were gradually revealed, showing that humanity had been watching, listening, and learning about every major species and government in known space. 1 year after the war's end, the Council convened for its first regular session under the new power structure. Business proceeded normally, trade disputes were resolved, resource allocation was negotiated, and territorial boundaries were adjusted through diplomatic discussion. But everything had changed. Every representative understood that they participated in galactic governance not because they were strong enough to enforce their will, but because humanity allowed them that privilege. The apex predator had revealed itself, then chosen to continue wearing the mask of civilization. Representative Dae Ho, reflecting on the transformation he had witnessed, finally understood the true nature of human diplomacy. For over a century, humanity had been managing galactic affairs from the shadows, nudging events toward stability and peace while carefully maintaining the illusion that other species controlled their own destinies. The humans sat quietly at their designated station, participating in discussions about mining rights and trade route security with the same polite attention they had always shown. Ambassador Yejin smiled and nodded as other representatives debated issues that human intelligence services had probably analyzed months in advance. Captain Wu Jin's special operations teams continued their work throughout the galaxy, but now their mission was maintaining the peace rather than preparing for war. Hidden bases that had once prepared for conflict now served as monitoring stations that watched for threats to galactic stability. The final scene of this transformation played out in the depths of space, where human patrol fleets maintained vigilant watch over shipping lanes and colonial territories. Their ships still appeared on official registries as civilian vessels engaged in peaceful commerce. But now everyone knew the truth. Humanity had always been the galaxy's protector. They had simply chosen to let others believe they were protecting themselves. The greatest weapon in the human arsenal wasn't their advanced technology or superior tactics. It was their ability to make other species forget they were predators at all. The galaxy was safer now, but safety came with a price. The knowledge that their peaceful civilization existed only because its apex predator preferred order to chaos. And somewhere in the depths of human space, new technologies were being developed, new strategies were being planned, and new contingencies were being prepared for the next species that might mistake human restraint for weakness. The sleeping dragon had awakened, demonstrated its power, then chosen to sleep again, but it would never again sleep as deeply as before, and the galaxy would never again forget what humanity truly was. The most successful predator in known space, graciously allowing its prey to believe they were still free.